So my name's Michael Hayes. I'm the manager of data and analytics for Miller Waste Systems, Inc. I've been at Miller Waste Systems for about 4 years now. Started in the finance department, moved on to IT, and that kind of set me up for a lead implementation role for the Sage Intacct project. I've worked on a couple systems implementations before Sage Intacct, one for one of our smaller sister companies, and then moved on to Sage Intacct, which is the big one. My company's about 2,500 people, and then 3,000 people altogether on the system. So, yeah.
My name's Anthony Sangra. I'm currently the Senior Manager of Financial Planning and Analysis at Nulogy. This is my 4th company where I've implemented Sage Intacct, so I've been around, been doing this since 2015, building out automated tech stacks. The current company's around 100 people headcount-wise.
Very good, thank you, gentlemen. So we picked, or I should say, we asked these individuals to come out and share their experiences with us because they ran an amazing implementation experience from the customer side, and we knew that they would have a lot to offer for us. So the first thing we want to touch on is change management. And even though this isn't a specific task necessarily in the methodology of the implementation, it's something that has to be addressed completely through any project. And so with respect to change management, what needs to be considered and how do you drive user adoption? And Anthony, we'll start with you on that.
So I think we all know change is hard. The harder part is change management. So when going about a system implementation, especially when you have people and processes that you need to reinvent, the biggest thing I would say is committing to a deadline of go live. And as that deadline gets closer, everybody gets cold feet. It's natural. But I think one thing for the finance department is, generally speaking, if a bill is late or a payment's a week late, nobody dies. So picking the right partner that you have to support you through that stage and just jumping right into it and moving ahead with it, that's always the best way I've found.
Perfect. And the last implementation that you did was a very, very short timeline. And I think you described it as, I will never do that again, right? So when we tell people it's going to take 4 months, they're like, nah, we can do it faster than that. It puts a lot of strain on things. And Michael, anything else to add on change management?
Yeah, absolutely. Communication is so important from every level of the organization when you're going through a project like this. Just having people on the same track from the beginning to the end is very difficult. When you have large companies, there can be different opinions on the product from all different levels coming in at all different times. So you got to be able to communicate effectively where you are, why you're going to the new product. People have to understand the shortcomings of the old system and why you're doing what you're doing. And if that's effectively communicated, you'll find that change management and early adoption is a lot easier than just trying to push things through without actually telling people why you're doing it or why things are happening. So, yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. So our next topic is around project planning. And we know that project management, both on the customer side and on the implementer side, is a very important part. So can you express, what those important pieces of project management are and just how important the planning process is? Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a bunch of different stages you have to go through when you do a project like this. Early stages, you have to do the analysis of your current system. What are the shortcomings? You have to plan out a functional requirements document for your company, what you want, where you want to go. And you have to obviously do the project plan for start to finish on how to actually get this all in place leading up to go live. And it's chaotic, my God. The amount of things that can go wrong is just crazy. And things are, so dynamic and stuff changes on the fly. And you got to have your project plan in place because your project plan is like the eye of the hurricane, When things go wrong, you can go back to your project plan and say, where are we? Where do we need to move to next? And when you got large teams in a company, it's very important that you can bring everybody together and say, this is what we've done, this went wrong, we went here, now we're back here, and this is where we're going. So, yeah.
Very good. Anthony, what are your thoughts?
So what Chuck was referring to from my end is I recently did a self-implementation in 45 days. I don't recommend anyone do that. So in addition, I would just say your data is not as clean as you think it is. And since all these systems talk now, everything counts down to, is every postal code formatted the same? Are you using 2-digit state codes? Are you spelling out the whole thing? So taking the time to just go through and make sure that everything is lined up and taking that process seriously, because the more that you invest up front, the easier it's going to be moving forward.
Very good, thank you. And actually, that does bring us to the next topic of data migration. And because we know that there's so many steps in the process, there's things that we do. We provide education, but the client is doing a lot of the work in the data migration process, the cleaning and everything else. So what would you say are the key elements or the most important things to having a successful data migration?
I would say the big thing is driving ownership and accountability, not only among the organization, but among your team. From a management perspective, I'll never know how to do an employee's job better than them, because they're the ones day-to-day in the trenches. So in order for the whole process to be successful is definitely increasing engagement up front and making sure people are owning their section of the system.
Michael?
Yeah, data migration is a nightmare. It was really tough for us. The waste industry is relatively complex. We've got municipal contracts, we've got commercial contracts, and we've got a ton of special reporting requirements. For us, we were coming off of Dynamics GP 2015, and we had a complex 6-segmented setup where we got our locations and our entities and our activities and our lines of businesses and all these different things baked into these structures. And we had to go from that to the dimensional structure offered by Sage Intacct. So part of that was a complete conversion of our chart of accounts. We had to build out special tools for it. We had a translation sheet, and we had to run everything through it. And to make things more complicated, we jumped onto a new payroll software before we went live with our Sage Intacct software. So we had weird things where we were trying to convert things to the old codes, then to the new codes, and all over the place. So that is a huge, tough part of the project. And nobody knows your data like you do. So as helpful as Bass was on that project with us, it was internally at Miller Waste. We had to work together to try and get the data clean. We had to try and convert it and get it all prepared for go live. And it was difficult, but at the end of the day, we did it, and we did a good job. So, yeah.
And that raises such a great point, and this is why data migration is a joint process as part of the implementation. Is you do know your data much better than certainly we would, and so you guys having to take ownership in making sure the data is clean and coming across is just so important, because that has to be right when you do the cutover for the go-live process. You don't want to find out after the fact that your data isn't where it should be. So the next area we want to chat about is in testing. So the user acceptance testing process, and again, I spoke earlier about this, about it being the most critical element of the project itself. And so why is it important? And in what part of the testing process did you find to be the most difficult?
It's tough to say which part's the most difficult, but user acceptance testing was huge for us. Within a company, you always have your subject matter experts and the people who are using the system at the end of the day, and there are little niche things that you would never think of that somebody on your team does every single day. It's part of their job, and they're going to spot if something goes wrong. For us, user acceptance testing went smoothly. We had a team of about 40 people that were performing the testing. They reported back to a project manager who met with us on a weekly basis. We'd go over all the issues and the errors and everything that was showing up. People would catch little things that we would never think about. Looking at the invoice documents, one of the business numbers would be off by a single character, and you'd be wondering, how the hell did that happen? But it's chaotic, like I said before. So many things can happen, and the user acceptance testing, it brings people on board for adopting the product. They feel more confident in it before go live, and it helps to find any outstanding issues. So huge part of it for sure.
Perfect. Thank you. Anthony, your perspective on this?
So all the knowledge base that Sage provides, watching the videos, all of that is a great start, but definitely stress testing every part of your system to the best of your ability. And as much as you decide to test, at the end of the day, there's always going to be something that will occur down the line that you couldn't even think of. At a previous company, I remember it's when a customer decided to start using emojis in their name, and that just wrecked every API we had. So just throughout testing, and even when you do hit roadblocks, just remember that you're partnering with the right firms, the right software, and everyone's working towards that same solution at the end of the day, which is a successful go live.
Perfect. Yeah. It's managing the team's expectation going into the testing process, and once you go live, if you think things are going to get glorious just because you switched or flipped the switch, that isn't necessarily always the case. It should be uneventful, but there will be the odd thing that happens. But if you do the best testing possible, then hopefully that process of cutting over is going to be as easy as possible for you. So I was going to ask you if you could say that the implementation goes smoothly, but at this point in time, based on your responses so far, I think we know the answer to that. But, should the unexpected arise, exactly, what should you do? How do you manage that with your team? And, we can start with you, Michael.
So with us, the unexpected happened a lot, but it was good. I find that every time a problem comes up in a project like this, usually you're discovering a strange process or a workaround or something that people were doing previously that needs a really deep look at it, because usually there is a better way to do it. For us, every time something went wrong, we had weekly committee meetings, we had a lot of teams in place to handle issues as they occur. Usually I'd meet with our BAS consultants, I'd go over the error that occurred, whatever the issue was that we ran into. We'd develop a plan to deal with it, and then we'd assign it to a subject matter expert, or myself would be on the team, and we'd go at that issue and try to solve it. For us, like I said before, having the project plan is so important, because when those issues come up, they will take you away from the rest of the project. And you do need to be able to recenter yourself afterwards and proceed onward with the project. So, yeah.
Terrific, thank you. And Anthony, last comments?
I would just say something's bound to go wrong in every implementation, no matter how large or small. So it's just about keeping calm, carrying on, and I would say being able to segment what's important. The whole project doesn't necessarily need to come to a standstill over a minor issue. And that's a benefit of having Intacct, is that each module can operate semi-independently.
Very good, gentlemen. So just some final thoughts then, if you can, on stakeholder engagement. Again, another very important element of the project. And Michael, maybe we'll start with you. What can you add as final thoughts there?
Yeah, so when we talk about stakeholders are anybody involved in the project, from the top to the bottom of the organization, who use the system or are affected by it through reporting or whatever it is. Having the people at the upper end of the company involved and understanding why you're doing this change is huge. When we talk about projects, a term people might hear often is tone at the top, right? The idea that if the people at the top of the organization feel a certain way, you'll see that reflected throughout the organization. So having early buy-in from the people at the top, and having them understand exactly why you're doing this, it's going to smooth the way for this process from start to finish. For the people who actually work with the system on a daily basis, having them on board helps with moving the entire project forward through UAT testing or whatever you need to do at that particular time. Yeah.
Not much to add on stakeholder engagement. Having that support from the top is great. I would say having the support from the bottom is even more important. And sometimes not everyone's opinion is a valid opinion. So, you know, as the subject matter expert and as the person that's gone and done the research and has chosen to go ahead with an Intacct implementation, you just need to trust your knowledge and sometimes just, you know, stick up for yourself and push ahead with the project.
Very good, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your input on that. Obviously, with their experience of doing multiple projects each, and certainly the ones that we've worked with on them together with Sage Intacct were large and extensive projects with integrations and a lot of things going on. Tremendous group of guys to be able to get some feedback on. We do have about 5 more minutes, so are there any questions from the audience for these gentlemen? Again, I think we've helped to set the expectation, but there may be other things or concerns that you have in moving towards doing a system migration that they may be able to help you out with. Any questions? You guys did that good a job. You either scared the bejeepers out of them, or we've got a question here.
What was the biggest challenge you guys faced during the course of system implementation?
Mike, you son of a gun. It was data migration for sure, easily. That was one of the most complex parts of the project because, like I said before, waste industry, very complex. The system we used for reporting was very complex. And we had a ton of special reporting requirements that we had to understand and deal with. Sage Intacct wasn't the end of the line for us, right? We had to look into external solutions. We dealt with Nectari at one point. We ended up going onto a reporting solution called Solver. We're looking at data warehousing right now for extensibility. It never ends, right? But for us, our business is so spread out now. We're advancing into all these different sections with sister companies, right? We've got a company that does chute fabrications in apartment buildings. We've got a company that focuses on bioreactors, right? So everything's expanding horizontally. And all these different businesses need flexibility in their reporting. So being able to have a system that supports that and can effectively, you know, horizontally spread out, that's huge. And for us, trying to fit that all together into a single system at the start, it was tough. But we're good now, and you know, we're building on it, and we got a bright future ahead of us, so yeah.
Perfect. Anthony, did you have anything else to add to that, or?
Yeah, I would say the most, if you're doing something unique and new. So 4 or 5 years ago, we did a connection from Shopify and Amazon through the Bass Bridge as an on-prem solution. And the industry was permanent, semi-permanent makeup. I was working for a microblading company, weirdly enough. And that's just, you know, when you're trying to deal with something that no one's ever really done before, then a lot of the unexpected happens, such as a rainbow emoji in a name. And yeah, just keeping in constant contact and working with your partners and trusting everyone's going to get to that same end goal, that's probably the most important thing.
Perfect. Any other questions for the panel? Yes. Did you guys hear that?
I heard that. Okay. So that is a great question. For us, we knew that we wanted to move towards not a future-proof solution, but a future-facing solution. So we wanted to go cloud-based. Sage Intacct, we reviewed a couple different solutions. I'm not going to throw the names out, but you know, there are a lot out there. Sage Intacct had a very strong dimensional structure, which we liked. We reviewed the API and all the functionality behind it, super solid. You know, we could see that Sage is really putting a lot of money and investment in building this out, not just for small and medium-sized entities, but up towards the larger entities too. So we wanted something that could support growth. And at the end of the day, you know, when it comes to cloud solutions, which I'm sure was talked about in different panels here, but cloud solutions have less infrastructure cost. I was a system admin on Dynamics GP before we moved over, and I couldn't tell you the amount of times that I had to deal with these crazy, wacky situations where some you know, third-party add-on, you know, they did a weird workaround, and I had to work through Christmas to try and, you know, figure it out, or I had to do year-end closing procedures in the system, right? And all that goes away with the cloud solutions, which was huge. You know, just 3 weeks ago, they threw out the R2 release, which was a big update to the system. Nobody even noticed. I didn't notice. Happened overnight, you know, it was just done. I didn't have to deal with anything, so You know, that was a big part of it. So very happy with what we ended up with.
Thank you. And Anthony, do you want to share your experience around why you chose Sage Intacct over others?
I would say having all your information in one place, and it makes conversations with the executive team or department heads, budget owners, a lot simpler. You can set up a dashboard, have everything flow out of one place. Someone can even go and look at a physical copy of their invoice just by 3 clicks, 2 if you're not doing a consolidation.
Very good. Well, listen, Michael, Anthony, thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us. We greatly appreciate you taking the time to come out and share this day with us and sharing your experiences with everybody. So, round of applause for our panelists, please. Thank you.